Welcome to Performance Driven Living, the podcast where we question everything. We don't tiptoe around tough topics, we walk right into them. Not to provoke, but to get closer to what's real. You might not agree with everything you hear, and that's okay. The show isn't about being right, it's about being real. These conversations are meant to stretch your thinking, challenge assumptions, and spark something deeper. The views shared are those of our guests and may not reflect those of the host or team. And while we dive deep into health, performance, and transformation, this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor before making changes to your health or lifestyle. Take what lands, leave what doesn't. But whatever you do, don't stop questioning.
We are here on the Performance Driven Living podcast. I'm your host, Mark Young, and I am joined by my friend today, John Hacker. And John is a young pioneer in this space, and I love this. And John, I always say, like, when they put together show notes, I've always got this iPad here trying to keep me on track, which is really hard to do. So I'm not sure that they actually believe that that works. But I always start talking and reading what they put in these intros, because I have to laugh because I could never say the things that they say because it's so eloquent. So your intro is coming from here. Awesome. John Hacker is the founder and CEO of NeurGear, a company born from nearly a decade of research, planning, and a deep commitment to unlocking the brain's full potential. With a background in biomedical engineering and a vision to shift the way we manage mental health and performance, John is pioneering a path where tech and healing meet.
I think you're right on that. That's actually a very elegant way of saying it.
Yeah, it's more eloquent than I would ever come up with. And I'll say that, like, it says in here that you're the CEO of NeurGear, which, but the product that you actually work with is called ZenBud, which is a much better name.
Yeah, and that's how you can find us too. It's all around ZenBud. The original company was founded as NeurGear because we were searching for domains that were open with
always
NEUR. Yeah,
that's always everybody's problem.
Yeah. But
so John, like, I want to start off by just asking, like, I'm familiar with your product. We've talked before, and I never want a podcast to look like a commercial, but
of course.
But the reality is you have a solution to a problem that a lot of people have.
Yeah.
And what I will say is that we live in a time, and anybody who's listening who deals with anxiety, which, I mean, lives in your sympathetic nervous system, if you know what that is, but there's this heightened sense of fear and anxiety and on the edge, and just always that feeling of go, 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 go.
Yeah.
It's that fight or flight type response that people live in. And truthfully, we're in such a freaking overstimulated world that, you know, the reality, and that's why I love the name ZenBud, because it's like Zen is like, my nutraceuticals company actually has a product called Daily Zen.
Yeah, and it's such a great word.
And the reason for it is literally, it's just like Zen just brings a peaceful, like, harmonic connotation with it, right?
Yeah, it's really all about balance. I'd say more than anything else.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, that's something that we really focused on too, is the balance in the system. The thing that's the real problem nowadays is there are so many factors that are putting people out of that balanced state. And anxiety is one of the results of that. Actually, it's not just anxiety. You can even take a look at PTSD and depression. They're results of being in an unbalanced state. And it really is crucial to implement solutions that can help bring you back to a balanced state and make you more resilient to going out of balance.
So one of the things when we talk about this anxiety, and I, just for the audience's sake as well, like,
for sure,
your nervous system's run in two ways, I'll say. There's this sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight, is how people know, right? That is the, you know, and going back to caveman times, we'll say that's the, I just spotted a lion.
You got to run for your life.
Now I need to run for my life.
Or you got to fight it to death. Those are your options.
Right. I'm going to run or I'm going to fight.
Yeah, 100%.
With a lion, I'm going to probably go with run.
Which is the right response in that scenario.
Something's happened. It's a survival instinct.
Yes. And it's very important.
And then the parasympathetic nervous system is what we call the rest and digest, right? That is where your energy, if we think of energy like a bandwidth type situation, like you only get so much energy, and the amount of energy that your body's capable of producing, you know, based on multiple other inputs, but your body's able to give off so much energy, and think about it in so much as well, it takes this much energy to run your nervous system, this much energy to run your muscular system, this much to run your digestive system, this much to run your cardiovascular system. Like, your body has to kind of
It has to
parcel
direct-
off,
Yes.
parcel off how much energy goes to such places. And when I'm in a heightened sense of danger, what ends up happening is the energy that would normally run my digestive system, run my, all these other types of things, gets
Those
reallocated.
other things. Yes.
It gets reallocated, and my nervous system says, wait, sorry guys, sex organs, digestive organs.
Everything outside of core functionalities and survival is put on the back burner. And the thing the problem is actually more than anything else is when you're in that sympathetic or fight or flight state, you should be there sometimes. When you are
100%,
legitimately fighting for
100%.
your life, you need to be in that sympathetic state. The problem is that we're getting to that sympathetic state more and more often when we're not fighting for our lives, and it's for longer and longer periods of time. When you're in a constant sympathetic state, it can literally kill you. I'm not even kidding here.
Well, no, that's the stress kills.
Yeah, stress kill, and that's the real thing, because this fight or flight or sympathetic state, which I always like, because Asprey describes kind of your inner Labrador with these two competing systems. And then if it's barking at everything that that's a problem, it's barking when you need it to. It's well trained. But if this inner Labrador, if this sympathetic fight or flight response is always active, it's going to start taking away from all those other vital systems. You're not going to digest food as well. You're not going to have actually as easier time thinking. You're going to start experiencing brain fog, and it's going to slowly degrade you over time, because you never have a time where your body's able to direct the energy to maintaining and keeping those core systems up, and it's going to knock years off of you.
Well, and I'm gonna speak to what a lot of people can relate to, and that is that sympathetic nervous system. If it starts shutting down the non-core processes that are essential to survival, one of the things that gets shut down, for instance, is your digestive system.
It is.
Like, your digestive system doesn't even function the way it should, which leads to additional cortisol release, which also leads to weight gain. And people can relate to the fact that living in a stressful environment leads to weight gain, because there are people I know who live in this stressed,
Sympathetic state,
hypersympathetic state all the time. And they say things like, I hardly even touch food and I can't lose a pound.
Well, I'm sure they feel that way, but they are more than hardly touching food, because what happens when you're in a sympathetic state is, first off, your stomach essentially turns off for the most part, and you end up not bringing in nearly as many nutrients as you would in a parasympathetic state. This means that you have to eat more in order to get the calories that you need.
Well,
and you need more for the nutrients that you need. So you consistently feel hungry. And on top of that, you'll end up bringing in more calories than you really want to. And so this leads to a state where your body's slowly decomposing. It's great for small bursts. It's terrible for consistent living.
100%. And but part of that too is that when that digestive system starts to slow down and shut down, even if you are eating less, your body doesn't, you're shutting off your metabolism.
Yeah, you are.
So you're not even burning calories the way that you normally would. And it's funny to say, like, in a stressed sympathetic response, you're not even burning calories the same way you would in a relaxed state.
Because it's trying to keep you alive. I mean, like, so this inner Labrador is your friend, or at least wants to be. It's your companion. It's trying to keep you alive. It's trying to keep you in the state that's going to keep you survival. But the problem is your brain's constantly telling your inner Labrador that we are going to die right now if we don't do this. And it's not true. You have food. You're still going to be able to eat. You're still going to be able to drink water. As long as you have the base necessities, you will survive. But with how our society is constructed, with how social media is nowadays, with how our work responsibilities are, and we weren't built for this, by the way. We were built for living and hunting and gathering and surviving on a base level. So you have this massive unbalancing component here, and your brain's constantly telling your sympathetic nervous system to be active, to be in that fight or flight state, to survive, because you need to get that food in. You need to be able to bring that water. And you need to be able to keep those base necessities going, when in reality, you have those base necessities already. And the key is if you can go back to a parasympathetic state, you're going to live longer. You're going to live a much happier life. I mean, no one likes being stressed for the most part. I mean, a little bit of stress here and there is fine, but no one likes being in that constant fight or flight state. And I was there for a very long time.
Well, you and I were just talking before we even started recording, and I was telling you, for instance, about a client of mine, and we fired her.
Yeah.
And I just said, I can't deal with you anymore. Like, this has nothing to do with work quality. This has nothing to do with anything other than I made the comment that having her in my life has actually, my sympathetic nervous system is always on overdrive.
Yeah. And
sometimes, and I'm going to be honest with you, I'll give her a pass on some of this and say, sometimes she's not saying anything, but it's the fear I live in of what the next text message looks like or what the next email looks like, because it's this instability that is forever creating an anticipated issue.
Yes.
And the anticipation itself is just as strong as the action. The fear that something's going to happen is in most cases worse than what actually is ever going to happen. And yet fear is living out a scenario that's unlikely to even happen. Like our bodies are responding endorphically in a way that actually is...
It's as if it's happening.
As if it's actually happening.
It's trauma and drama, I'd say. Trauma and drama is all around us. And when you have trauma or drama, it conditions an inner Labrador saying, this thing right here is going to kill you. And once your Labrador thinks it's going to kill you, it's going to get into that state so you're ready to fight it, if you're ready to flee, or freeze or fawn. Actually, I would include two, which are all part of your fight or flight state. And the key is telling that inner Labrador and training it to be like, no, it's not going to kill me. Yes, this person's a terrible person. If you have a person that's a type 3 or type 4 person, which read Dave Asprey's most recent book if you haven't yet, Heavily Meditated. He talks about in there, massive reset for my own framework, understanding humanity. And I actually love the framework quite a bit. But type 3s or type 4s are folks that always focus on win-lose scenarios. If you have someone like that in your life and you're starting to have that inner Labrador conditioned, you really shouldn't be interacting with them. And you did the right thing, I would say, Mark, here, in bringing them out of your life. Because otherwise that Labrador's going to get more and more agitated, even when they're not around.
And what's funny is like making that decision in my life with some social hygiene was literally for me, like my nervous system has downregulated just knowing that this will end, that the anticipation of it ending has actually downregulated my nervous system. And what's interesting is I've actually watched hers go through the roof. Like, and I'm like, exactly. Because that's exactly right. Like,
if she's a win-lose person, she wants you to lose and she wants to win.
100%.
And by cutting her out or cutting them out.
I think it's a lose-lose. Because win-loses to me don't make sense. Because I know I was with Dave actually at a thing, and it was a small gathering, and was talking to him about his type 3, type 4 stuff. And I actually was saying, like, we talk about win-lose people. It's the for me against you kind of mentality. And I'm like, the problem is I think so many people who are in a win-lose mindset actually have lose-lose outcomes.
Yes, consistently.
Consistently.
100%.
Like you're mad at me because you don't think that I should win out of this scenario, but me losing ends up making you lose too. And I've actually, using her as an example, and I'm sorry to go there, but my nervous system is right there.
Yeah.
But using that as an example, like I've actually told her, I'm like, she's the only client that I've ever worked with that I refuse to allow access to anyone on my team. And my whole team is very client forward. They are white glove, I'll say trained, but minded. And, very white glove. I refuse to let anybody even reply to an email. Like it all goes through me. And I've told her, like, the reason is your communication is so aggressive that I'm afraid that if my team saw the way you communicate, they wouldn't want to work for you. And then you're not going to get the best work that you're going to get. Like I have to filter everything you say to get them to actually work with you.
I want to say something quickly. I would do not consider yourself the filter for that type of negativity because it will clog in on you. I understand protecting the team because I did the same thing. I had a situation where there was a win-lose, or actually realistically more of a lose-lose person. They destroyed part of their career doing what they did.
Sad.
It's terrible for all people all around. And it lost me one of the core members of my team. I loved working with them, but they got so stressed because of what happened here, because I had allowed them access, which was the problem, that we lost them. And that's just something that's actually a trauma I hold to this day. That individual and what they did it's never going to fully leave me. So I understand doing that, but you're not the filter. I think that's a wrong mindset. You are,
No.
If anything, you're the blockade, keeping them away from
Right.
If anything, you're the blockade. You're not the filter, you're the blockade.
And they know the energy anyways. Like energy doesn't stop with me. Like that passes from me to them too. And and again, that's why that just needs to end, which is again is a hygiene issue on my part. Like sometimes you need to clear the deck of the things that stress you out. But I want to actually touch on, I'm using that as an example of one of the things that keeps my nervous system high.
And fire.
But there's so many other things, like literally, like what are some of the things? Like give me 4 or 5 things that you say that keep our nervous systems up in this sympathetic state.
I'd say the biggest thing is trauma and drama. I would say that actually likely fits into both. And the trauma piece can actually last for a very, very long time after the drama ends. And anything that reminds you even close of that, get you right back there. One of the other things I think a lot of people don't really do a lot of thinking about is not having good social hygiene. I think that's actually a big thing, who you're surrounding yourself with. Primarily, if you have people in your life, even if they're not win-lose or lose-lose people, but if you have people that are even win-win, but for whatever reason, it's constantly edging on your trauma or drama, it's going to cause problems. And you're going to end up having scenarios where even if it's not their fault, it's just still not something you can work with. At least not until you go and do the reframing and you go and bring yourself through that trauma and understand why you're feeling this way. I think another big thing is we have terrible lifestyles right now. In the United States, there's a ton of substances that we're consuming on a consistent basis, whether through the air or through the food or through the water, that we really shouldn't be. I think that's very well known. And that can make it easier to go into that sympathetic state on accident because your body is going into panic mode. It's the panic button, and whatever puts your body into panic mode gets you into a sympathetic state. And once it's in panic mode, it's really hard to get it out without some sort of intervention. I would say that the thing where I find myself going to sympathetic state as well is feeling this need to succeed and this need to constantly engage. Social media is a terrible thing too, because it'll constantly encourage you to go for that next dopamine rush. It'll constantly encourage you to be in that quick reaction twitch state, which is your fight or flight state. Social media does that to you over time.
One of the things what I was getting at there, and I mean, you've gone into a lot deeper things than I was even going to go to, and because what I was going to say is, what are the things that keep us in our sympathetic nervous system? Cell phone alerts.
100%. It is.
Having the cell phone next to the bed is not just an EMF thing, but having the cell phone next to the bed literally encourages me to check every time I see a little light flicker on the telephone to read the alert. Like someone sends you an Instagram message and I'm like, well, do I need to check it?
Because you're going to get anxious. What happens, you get anxious about the response. Is this something important? Is it something that I really need to take a look at right now?
Well, and the brain, my background is clinical psychology, and I've said that a bunch. And I always look at that the brain doesn't like an open loop.
It wants everything closed.
It wants everything closed. Yeah. And I want to bring everything to fruition. And if there's anything that makes me think there's an open loop, I need to go close it. And something as little as, and you notice most notifications just tell you there is a notification. They don't tell you what the notification is.
Because they want you to open the app.
Because they want you to open the app because then you scroll more.
Yeah.
And it's like, so I see John Hacker sent you liked your post or whatever. And I'm like, well, what post did he like? I don't, and your brain starts that cycle all over again, which again, doesn't allow me to completely shut down and rest. And it's like, and I think that's actually half the hygiene of keeping the phone in another room.
Well, I mean,
is literally keeping, but nowadays, like people's phones are hooked to you can't even watch a TV program because you got your phone linked to your smart TV, and then your smart TV even shows you the notifications.
I'm never going to do that on my smart TV.
Ever.
No, never.
But it's the phone notifications do it. It's the 24-hour access that people have to your lives. It is now we've got the commercials that play even in the middle of our streaming services, that it's worth paying the extra $3 a month to not have the commercials.
Because it's an interruption, and it can actually put you into that state. I mean, this is what I was saying before. Like, we have a terrible hygiene environment right now for sympathetic activation. Like, it's all over the place, and because sympathetic activation sells. If someone goes into fight or flight mode and they see something, and that gives them a little bit of endorphin rush, it gives them their heart beating a little bit, and that in turn is going to make you be more willing to remember the product and eventually buy the product. So sympathetic activation is all over the place, and it's highly incentivized for companies to use it as a methodology. It's kind of similar to how sex sells, but in this case, it's fight or flight sells, because a lot of companies don't want to be associated with the whole sex thing, and I mean it is kind of crazy, to be honest with you, how bad it's gotten. We have some of the highest anxiety rates that we've ever had. And I'm not even going to say just that. The stress is the highest it's ever been. And I would really say stress resilience is the lowest it has ever been. If you go back even 10 years and you talk to folks, or 10, 20, 30 years, it's very clear that they lived in a world that was very different from what we live in today. And I grew up in this world, by the way. I'm a younger guy, so this is most of what we've been experiencing. But it's very clear that when you remove these type of stimuli, you're able to have more time to bring up parasympathetic activity and strengthen that system so that when you need to go into sympathetic, you can do it right. But with all these stimuli and this constant overwhelm, which is I really think what it is, you never get a chance to strengthen that parasympathetic system. You never get a chance to train your inner Labrador. And then we get so surprised that most people's inner Labradors are barking at everything. Wow, that's no surprise to me.
Well, I'll go into traffic is busier than it's ever been, and road rage and everything we see. It's you call a customer service line nowadays and you get barked at by the person on the telephone. It's like, I'm just calling to ask you for help on something. Like, you're supposed to be the friendly person. We're at this heightened level of awareness all the time. And I think for most people there's a complete disconnect, and I don't even think they know how to bring it down. And in some cases they don't even know that you can bring it down. And I think that manifests differently for everybody. I'll say this, like, she's probably going to watch this episode, but I have an aunt that I love dearly, who literally has nothing. Like, if she is in a zero stress situation, I say that she will find a way to be stressed out about it. And it's because here, and I'll say this, and I mean this genuinely, because the endorphin rush, the dopamine hits, as you mentioned, and this is the whole, we use the word gamification because that sounds much kinder than dopamine addiction.
Yeah.
Which is what it is.
No, it definitely is.
It is a dopamine addiction that, every time I push a button, something chimes and tells me I won. Like, I just keep pushing the button, right? It's the slot machine type thing at the casinos. And the reality is like that dopamine hit is addictive.
Yes. And
people get addicted to the dopamine, and I don't get dopamine hits in a parasympathetic state. And
so I would coin it as sympacells, because I mean, it's sympathetic state sales. If you're in a sympathetic state, you're going to get that dopamine hit more often because, oh gosh, you finally did it. You did the goal. You went to fight or flight. You succeeded.
Hit.
And it's hit. And it brings you back into that sympathetic state to do it again. And it's a terrible practice that we have.
So I go there to say that the sympathetic nervous system is addictive.
Yes, 100%.
I mean, being in that survival mode is addictive. And and for some people, like someone like my aunt, who just lives worried, like, and that to me, like, that's weird to me. My mom was the same way. Like, she was nervous about everything, regardless of what was going on. But that nervous system state is addictive, and a lot of that is the dopamine rush, right? A lot of that is that same type of thing. But I don't think, and some of it is, what do I want to say? Like, they're probably low-level cases of dopamine addiction, but then we've got the people who are the extreme, the bungee jumping, parachuting crowd, who are the thrill seekers, which is the same thing.
It is, and it's massively curious. I would say it's not only sympa addiction or sympathetic addiction that's a problem here. It's also that once your nervous system learns that a state will continue your survival, it likes to adapt to that state. So once you've been forced into a state by trauma or drama, typically, I like using that because it's usually one of those two things. It's trauma or drama that does it. Once you're forced in that state, if your body says, okay, this is the only way we can survive now, and hey, I've been doing this for the last month because we've had such a long period of trauma and drama, it might say, okay, well, this is clearly better. Let's continue doing this. And then it'll find other reasons and create trauma and drama. And this is my fan theory on how type 3, type 4s, or I'll call them type 5s for lose-lose, how they're built. It is, they've gone, and I feel sad for people that get into the state because it's a terrible state to live in. Yeah. I was in a constant anxiety state for most of my childhood. I had terrible OCD growing up. It almost killed me, very frankly. And it's terrible not having control of your mind. And the whole thing, everything that drives me is liberating human consciousness wherever I can, because I don't want anyone else to ever experience that. That's what keeps me going. But it's crazy because all the system is set up to make sure that you can't do that. It is set up to constantly put you into a sympathetic state, because if you're super anxious, you're more likely to watch the TV, you're more likely to watch the news, you're more likely to care about politics.
If it bleeds,
you're
it
more
leads.
likely to buy things, you're more likely to buy products, you're more likely to engage in our consumerist economy, and you're going to make some people more money. And even if that money is only a fraction of a percent, it doesn't matter, because it's cumulative. Because if they can do that to you and they can do that to 3 million people, that's significant revenue. And they'll continue doing that until the day that they're forced to stop.
Yes. I'll end the sympathetic nervous system conversation there, because that was your moment. So I want to go to our parasympathetic.
Okay.
So maybe we'll have a calmer conversation there.
I think I went to sympathetic there a little bit. I'll be honest with you.
I think it's good. Yeah. But the reality is like the sympathetic fight or flight gets a lot of attention, because we understand the lion showed up and now I have to run. And for a lot of people living, particularly in an American culture, there's 100% this go type thing, and there's performance anxiety all over the place.
Yes.
Parasympathetic is the everything's okay.
I would expand on that, Mark. It's not just everything's okay. It's what's keeping you alive. Your parasympathetic sympathetic system is considered your autonomic nervous system. Your sympathetic really is only supposed to deal with those fight or flight scenarios. It is very specialized. It's meant to be a very small amount of the time. Parasympathetic is literally everything else. It keeps your stomach moving. It keeps your heart beating. It keeps your lungs breathing. The things that you don't have to think about that keeps you alive on a consistent basis, that's all parasympathetic. So when you're constantly sympathetic state, all of those things suffer. And so we really need to prioritize strengthening that parasympathetic system and strengthening our ability to resist those sympathetic states.
Well, and I want to go even one step deeper to that. And that is, yes, parasympathetic is all the stuff that keeps us alive, right? It is what allocates the energy correctly.
Yes.
So that the body is able to do what it does. And I always think of that allocation as bandwidth, right? Like if too many people are online, everybody's signal slows.
Yes.
Right? We can all relate to internet
I follow you.
we all relate to internet metaphors, right? Like too many people in the office are downloading things. Like I remember memos that would go out in offices, saying, if anybody's using the internet to stream music at your desk, like that's a blocked website now because it's tearing up too much bandwidth.
Yeah.
Well, because the essential things in the office couldn't get done because the non-essential things were pulling too much energy.
Yes.
And our bodies function that same way. But to your point, we need that sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system isn't bad.
No.
It's specialized, and we're trying to run football analogy. Yeah. We're trying to run special teams on the field all the time, and special teams are supposed to only be run in special scenarios.
Well, your sympathetic state's being abused by the content that you consume and by the environment that we live in. It's being abused and it's reacting that way. And I always go back to the interlaboratory example that Dave came up with this originally. But the reason why I keep coming back to that, because I think it's an amazing way to kind of visualize a third party so that you don't have to think about yourself. Yeah. It allows you to actually visualize what's really happening. If you abuse a dog, which never do this, if you do this, I hate you, period. Never abuse dogs and animals. They're too precious. They're too innocent. But if you were to abuse a dog, they will constantly bark at things. They will start seeing everything as a threat.
It's trauma.
And it's a trauma and drama. And that's part of the abuse.
Well, and the real value in understanding sympathetic and parasympathetic is not for us to exhaustively define what they are, but the real value, and there's a health metric that's being used all over the place now called HRV.
Heart rate variability.
And heart rate variability, literally, and a lot of people are like, they're using HRV, and my HRV, and every people who wear Aura rings and Whoop straps and bio straps and all this other kind of stuff, like they're all measuring this HRV. And literally, if I can just kind of give a simplistic definition of what HRV is, it's the body's natural ability to be able to move from sympathetic to parasympathetic smoothly.
Yes.
Because when you should be in parasympathetic, how long does it take your body to recover?
Get back to that.
And I use the example because people are like, they don't necessarily get that. And I tell people, like, if we both ran a mile, the fitness level of you or me is not defined by who finished the mile faster. The fitness level is actually measured by whose heart went back to normal faster when the mile was finished.
Yes.
If you beat me because you ran a 5-minute mile and I ran a 6-minute mile.
I can't run a 5-minute mile.
I didn't want to make that number too high, dude. But you run an 8-minute mile and I run a 9-minute mile.
Yeah.
And at the end of 8 minutes, it takes you 10 minutes of with your hands on your knees trying to catch your breath.
Yeah.
And I'm enjoying a drink at the bar. Like, I'm in better shape than you.
Yes, 100%.
You finished an 8-minute mile. I finished a 9-minute mile, but I went back to normal faster. I'm in better physical shape. HRV is the same measurement.
Except it relates to your ability to go into that fight or flight mode when you need to.
It's nervous system control.
Yes.
So
it's nervous system fitness, I think, is actually
I think that's fair. That's fair.
Best way to say it.
And so HRV is kind of that measurement. It's the recovery speed
Yes.
at which a person can go from fight or flight back to rest and digest and be able to bounce back and forth freely, because it's almost a maturity, I would call it, in the nervous system to know when something is actually a fight or flight situation versus a fake fight or flight situation that has my body tricked into thinking that life is terrible.
Well, it's actually almost a discretionary. So there's this, you can almost consider it a funnel, actually a little bit. You have the discretionary part where, is this something I need to be fight or flight or not? You make that choice. Your brain makes that choice. Your nervous system makes that choice. And then even if you get tricked, if you're able to come back and say, oh, this really isn't fight or flight, and come back faster, you can experience less time in that sympathetic state, and you have more time for your body to actually do the things it needs to do. It's kind of like I would consider being in a parasympathetic state consistently just as important, if not even more important, than getting a good night's sleep, because it's very similar processes. And if you're in a sympathetic state while you're sleeping too, that causes insomnia and that causes so many issues. Right. You really need to be able to bring that down to parasympathetic.
So there's a lot of tricks. Like, I know people, for instance, are like, oh, I need to get better sleep. I need to get better sleep. Like, I'm gonna overdose on melatonin and whatever. And it's like, I can go off on that track. But the reality is like, this HRV score, why it's so important is because your body needs to be in sympathetic when it needs to be in sympathetic. It needs to be in parasympathetic otherwise. And the ability for your body to move back and forth is actually controlled by a core system in your body, obviously your nervous system, but all of this is actually related to what's called the vagus nerve.
Yes.
And the vagus nerve is the only nerve, correct me if I'm wrong, that actually runs from the brain to every other part of the body. There are branches all over the place, but the vagus nerve actually is the primary nerve that runs from the body. And arguably recently, there's been a lot of studies that show that vagal nerve blockage actually is more running from the gut to the brain rather than the brain to the gut.
Which are some interesting terms there. Any part of the nerve that goes to the brain is afferent, and everything that goes out to the body is afferent. The vagus nerve is composed of tons of fibers of both. And vagus actually means wandering in Latin, because you hit it on the nail. It wanders the body, and it's the wandering nerve. And it's your 10th cranial nerve. And it's massively important to have a strong vagus nerve, because that leads to a strong ability to switch between these different states. And I actually do want to touch a little bit more on HRV for a second, because I actually find it absolutely fascinating. Heart rate variability is, I do think we're overhyping it a little bit in industry right now. It's not the end all be all. And there's actually a lot of, so ironically enough, when you see HRV, you think it's all the same number. It isn't. You can calculate like 10 different ways. And some companies calculate some ways to make it seem that the scores are higher. Some calculate other ways to be a little bit more logistically accurate. And that causes a lot of the discrepancies that you see in the devices in the space. But regardless, if you're seeing increases over time, that's usually a good thing. But I do want to clarify that, because I have seen
I agree with you. No, I agree with you, because I always tell people that HRV consistency is actually more important than the HRV score.
Yes.
And a consistent ramp up and a trend line in your HRV is a good thing, regardless what the numbers are. Yeah. And a trend down is a bad thing, regardless what the numbers are.
Yeah. And people want to hear like that, oh, my HRV is going to increase by 10 or 35 points. And we actually, in my work, we actually do see that quite commonly. But realistically, it comes down, your body is so different from person to person. What is a score of 1 point increase for one person can be massive in comparison to what a score increase for another person, where it can be almost nothing. And that's normal, and that's okay. But that trend line is very important.
So we touched on the vagus nerve and this idea that the vagus nerve is this wandering nerve that runs the body. And the vagus nerve is ultimately what sends the signal to the body as to whether or not we should be alarmed or not.
Yes.
That when the brain gets overstimulated, the brain uses the vagus nerve,
along with some other pathways too, but primarily, yes.
But to communicate to the rest of the body what they should be doing based on the current circumstance.
Yes.
And if the brain recognizes a circumstance as being overly stimulated, it's going to overstimulate the rest of the body because of that vagus nerve. And even when the brain knows that something isn't necessarily a stimulated situation, the vagus nerve can still send the message that there's a problem because it doesn't all happen instantaneously.
Well, and it's a speed thing. So your autonomic nervous system is all about reacting as fast as possible to those life dangerous events. And if your vagus nerve or even your entire autonomic nervous system is conditioned to react in a certain way to a certain stimuli, even when your brain's like, this is safe, your autonomic nervous system,
there's a subconscious response that says, no, it's not.
It's literally, it's not a choice.
Yep.
And like, that's the thing, like that's, the trauma and drama causes it such a way to condition your nerve to where it's not a choice to be in these states. You are forced into these states consistently.
I used to work with a client in psych practice years back who, it was the weirdest thing, but she had been abused and was having responses to any man that she came in contact with that wore strong cologne. And because she didn't know what was going on, but it took a long time to figure out that when she was around a man who wore strong cologne, her defense height went up because it reminded her of her abuser.
Yes.
And it was like, it didn't even matter the scent. It was anytime a man wore strong cologne, she went into a response and consciously had no idea this was even happening. Well, now, and again, it was this very, this subconscious response to things. I do want to move on because I want to get to ZenBud.
Yeah, of course. I will say on that particular topic, you could probably do a full lengthy podcast on why that happens.
100%.
But yes, the ZenBud, what we actually do.
Yes, exactly. I want to give time there. So we've had this whole conversation about nervous system, sympathetic, parasympathetic, the movement between the necessity of being able to regulate how fast the sympathetic nervous system is being triggered, but also how fast it's being downregulated.
Of course.
And the necessity of making sure that we are doing everything in our power to deal with what we refer to as vagal tone.
Yes.
I
will say this. I like the concepts behind vagal tone. I think, again, it's one of these scenarios where it's a commonly used term to explain a very complicated phenomenon.
Fair.
There's a ton more to it. It's not like you actually have a singular tone in your vagus nerve. And what that is between different people is different too. But yes, the vagus nerve is massively important. That's the work that we do. We're the world's first and only ultrasound vagus nerve stimulator. That's what the ZenBud is. It's a headset. You wear it 5 minutes a day, every day, and it can help you be able to better switch between that sympathetic and parasympathetic state. And I really want to emphasize here, like, this is actually by far the most effective vagus nerve stimulator to exist. And I say this based off of the data that we've collected. We recently published a peer-reviewed study in the Journal of Medical Internet Research. And we saw over the course of 4 weeks, 5 minutes a day stimulation and an at-home setting, which that typically brings down these types of scores I'm about to share with you, because people can misuse it, people could not be compliant. But over the 4 weeks, with 28 individuals in an at-home setting, 5 minutes a day, we saw a 78.6% remission rate in anxiety. For reference, that's massive. That's like close to 4 out of every 5 people that came to our study with moderate to severe anxiety left without. They would no longer be clinically diagnosed.
I was actually talking with a friend of mine, and this, to me, almost feels like acupuncture for the nervous system. Like you're finding a very specific place, because the way that your device works is, because like I said, it's a headset,
but
it's actually not doing anything.
It's doing
nothing with your ears.
So it's kind of crazy because it's not working on the cochlea, so it's not what you hear. The headset itself, you have this region of the ear called the symbiconcha region, which is innervated by the auricular branch of the vagus nerve, which we've been talking about. And in that region, we send gentle ultrasound waves to stimulate that nerve. And the really neat thing is that there are plenty of devices in the space that have tried to do this for years.
And I want to clarify something real quick, because you're saying you're stimulating a nerve.
Yes.
But stimulating doesn't mean heightening.
No.
Stimulation of that nerve actually means that you're stimulating the relaxation
we're stimulating
portion of that nerve, right?
Yes, that's a scientific term. But realistically, what we're doing is we're helping downregulate that sympathetic response.
Right.
And upregulate your ability to move between those responses as necessary, which is the reason why we see HRV shifts. But again, HRV is not the best metric, but it is one metric.
Right. And to somebody listening, like, it literally, this device looks like a headset.
Yes.
But the headset is just the form factor.
Oh yeah.
But it has nothing to do with wearing a headset. It has nothing to do with you listening to anything. It's just an easy way to get to that.
It's an easy way to get to that symbiconcha region right here in the pinna of the ear, which means the outside of the ear.
Because you could probably turn it into like a clip that goes on your ear and just as easily
You released all our design plans, Mark?
I know, that's what I'm doing. I'm in the blueprints.
Yeah.
So yeah, the fact that it's a what I don't want to do is I don't want someone to think that we say it's a headset and then they think that they're listening to neurobeats or something.
No, that's not. This is not binaural beats. That's not. So realistically, the signal on those is very low. You do see a signal with binaural beats, and so it's around 10%. It's actually very similar to what you see with electrical vagus nerve devices, which is around 10% remission.
This is totally different than that. This is actually using ultrasound to relax the nervous system, not through audio stimulation, not through any kind of listening or visual
but through direct stimulation of direct modulation actually is the best way to say it. Direct modulation of the auricular branch of the vagus nerve. We can do that with ultrasound, which means that we're able to get the right amount of energy to the nerve consistently. There's a ton of electrical vagus nerve devices in the space. You can clip a TENS unit to your ear if you want to try to get this type of effect. You only ever see...
You're twitching all day.
Well, it's very painful. And part of the problem is that the intensity that you're able to get with that is actually exceedingly low. Because if you turn it up too high, you start burning yourself with electrical stimulation. And
but this isn't electrical. This is ultrasound.
But this is ultrasound. But what exists today, what people have been trying to use for a very long time, are these electrical devices, either on the neck or on the ear. And the problem with them is that they don't have a good energy deposition. You get very, very low intensity stimulation with these devices because if you turn it up too high, you start to get burning, you start to get shocking, you cause pain, you can cause migraines.
Right.
All things that you probably want to avoid. And even doing that, you still don't get good energy at the nerve. With ultrasound, we're able to do a much higher energy load, still well within parameters, but we're able to do a higher energy load without causing discomfort.
Yeah, and what's important about this for anybody listening is you're using a very non-invasive technique here because it's ultrasound, so you're not feeling anything. You're not hearing anything.
For Doppler.
Yeah, you're not hearing anything. You're not feeling anything. You're not doing any kind of damage to your body by putting ultrasound near your brain. It's literally just... You're using ultrasound technology to almost massage the nerve to bring it down.
That's definitely a way to say it.
I'm layperson in all your science. You're too smart. But trying to bring that down is like you're bringing down the nervous system, and ultimately what you're doing is you're heightened, but this brings you down, and then you go back to heightened, and this is going to bring you down.
Yes.
And repeatedly doing this down regulation kind of helps your body train the same way that you would be working out a muscle.
Yes.
Repeatedly doing something over time actually causes it to be reactive. Like your body just knows how to do it on its own because you've trained it. Kind of like how many people remember how they drove to work yesterday. You don't, because you don't remember the drive in, because it's almost an autopilot situation for you now, because you get in the car and you go. It's autopilot, and you're kind of getting your nervous system to get that autopilot down regulation through that continuous training. And you're saying that 78% of people who use it are noticing a reduction in anxiety levels.
It's not reduction, it's remission. There's a big difference between
zero.
I want to make that clear. Remission means that they are essentially no longer presenting
non-detectable.
They're non-detectable. And so plenty of companies will claim like 40 to 60% reduction in symptoms. But these are folks that are extremely anxious at the start. So they went from extremely down to severe. Or they went from severe down to moderate. We went from severe and moderate down to minimal or to none.
Which is incredible.
This is the highest efficacy rate that we've seen actually in the vagus nerve space.
No, that's incredible.
Except for the implantables, which no one wants to get a surgery.
Don't do an implantable. Your body will automatically try to reject anything foreign in its system.
It causes scar tissue, and over time it'll slowly get worse and worse, and then you have all the different metalloids. The implantable space is an issue. I respect the scientists that are trying to do work in there, but realistically, it's not a great product for kids.
Yeah, not a recommendation. But this thing, and I say I've used the ZenBud. I love the ZenBud. I love the idea that, not only down-regulating that nervous system do you notice anxiety relief, but people will end up with real sleep that's actually deep sleep and not interrupted sleep and insomnia. Yes. People will notice that they actually find themselves thinking clearly because they're not in this heightened dopamine state on the regular basis. They'll find themselves in better, and I always look at a holistic approach to everything, and that is we're not just talking about a physiological thing here, because down-regulated nervous systems lead to better social engagement. They lead to better romantic relationships because you're not on edge all the time. They lead to higher work performance because you're not in this panic state on a regular basis. They lead to better financial decisions because you're not in this fight or flight. Like literally the holistic human ends up getting treated when that nervous system is able to be down regulated.
100%. And I think the biggest thing is that, again, your parasympathetic state is responsible for you essentially, in primary
keeping you
context.
alive.
It's keeping you alive. And when it's like, if you turn off your life support systems, you're going to start having problems. And that's what you're doing when you're sympathetic all the time. And what we do is we help you turn that back on, and we help you train the inner Labrador to be a bit calmer and help it get through whatever abuse or drama or trauma and drama. I love using that term, trauma and drama. But whatever it's gone through, we're able to bring it back to a state where it's able to do what it needs to do for you. It's your friend.
Yeah.
Your vagus nerve is your friend. It wants to help you. But sadly, life has caused issues with it. Life has drama or abuse has caused it to become more reactive than it needs to be. So if we can help you retrain it, help you reconnect with your vagus nerve, it'll continue to be your friend. And once it's your friend, it's your best friend, and it'll do so much good for you. And Mark, make sure to keep using that 5 minutes a day. It's a cumulative effect.
Oh,
it's training. You
100%.
It's like
100%.
building out muscle. You got to keep using it, man.
100%.
Like doing a single 5-minute session is not nearly enough. Once every day.
Absolutely.
In the clinical trial that I mentioned, we started to see rather significant results as soon as the first week. It was I think 60 of the 78% remission rate was in the first week. But you still have to keep using it after that.
Well, anybody who knows me knows I'm all about the positive energy vibes. I don't want to go in another direction.
Good.
Guys, I encourage you down here in the show notes, you're going to see links to ZenBud. I want you to go check it out. Absolutely worth the investment to get involved in this. Links to actually find out how to follow ZenBud as well as John Hacker here on social media will all be included below as well. Check this out. It is beyond important to make sure that we understand that getting into a parasympathetic nervous system, I say that we talk in the space of longevity about the length of life, but being able to spend a life in more of a parasympathetic nervous system is what I'm going to refer to as quality of life. Yeah. Because the enjoyment that comes out of just having some peace out of life and having meaning in life and having meaningful relationships, meaningful interactions at work, meaningful, purpose-driven moments out of our life only come from when we're in this Zen place, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that we've actually are able to harness this technology to put ourselves into a quality of life situation is, to me, I would say it's invaluable. Like there's no money that's worth being able to get there. John, thank you for coming in today. I appreciate you, bud.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming in, and we'll catch you next time.